Shalom! My name is Chris Shoemaker, also known as Rabbi Yehuda ben Shomer. I'm the author of the Get Back to the First Century books and curriculum, and I just wanted to take a few moments to kind of share my testimony, the inspiration for me writing the book. You see, I was born and raised in a Protestant, Free Will Baptist Christian home, had a really good upbringing, was in church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night. Every time the church doors were open, me and my family were pretty much there. So I was raised in church, and at a very young age, I had just this desire to know God, to know all about Him, and to know all about His Word, and to know all about Jesus. And I was saved at a very young age, at the age of 6. And I remember going to the altar at that time with my best friend and giving my heart to the Lord. And as I got older, of course, you become a teenager and you want to kind of explore and spread your wings. And during that time, between the ages probably of 10 to 13, I backslid. And I gave into peer pressure in junior high and was kind of living a double life and wanted to be a part of the world and be popular and be accepted by my peers. But at the same time, I still had that desire to be different. So in front of my friends, I was acting like the world, involved in what the world was involved in, cursing, swearing, and all that kind of stuff. And there just came a point where I got sick of living a double life. I remember very clearly coming early to school. I was within walking distance of my junior high at that time. And I came to my homeroom. The hallway lights were still off and the door to the homeroom was locked. And I was just sitting there with my back against the door, waiting for somebody to come and open up. And I was convicted in my heart. And I said, Lord, I'm sick of living a double life. I said, I'm just sick of living like the world Monday through Friday in front of my friends and coming home and being the best Christian there ever was and, playing church and playing Christianity on Sunday and Wednesdays. And I made a decision right then and there. I rededicated my life to the Lord. And I said, God, I want to follow you and I want to serve you for the rest of my life. And I asked Him to forgive me of all my sins and to forgive me for living a double life. And, it was that watershed moment that I decided to live my life for God. And there was no turning back for me. I didn't care what people thought or said. I wasn't going to be pressured by my peers anymore. I was going to live according to the Word of God to the very best of my ability. And I was going to live the Christian life. I was going to serve the Lord with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength and love Him as such. And so I spent my entire high school career as a strong, hardcore believer, and I want to thank and praise God for sending Christian friends my way. We were able to have each other's back. We were able to come together and support each other and be a witness to our friends and to our peers at school. We actually created a high school ministry called the Violent Peace Ministries. It was a ministry reaching out to the subculture of the headbangers and those that were into the heavy metal music of that time. And Violent Peace was purposely named so because it's ear-catching. It sounds like a contradiction. People's like, well, what's up with this violent peace? Jesus suffered a violent death in order to bring us peace. And that was it. We would pass out Bibles and tracts and music cassettes and CDs. We would have a home Bible study on the weekends, and whenever there was a Christian concert in the area, we would invite friends, load them up, take them to the concert, and we would put out a kind of an underground hardcore Christian magazine. And we did a lot of things to reach out to our peers. And then I graduated and decided to go to Bible college, where I majored in Bible and in missions. I knew that God wanted me to be a full-time minister. I knew He wanted me to serve Him the rest of my life. I just wasn't exactly sure what He wanted me to do. I knew I was called to preach. I knew I was called to teach. But beyond that, I didn't really know. So I thought, missions is a good catch-all. It will qualify me and equip me and prepare me for anything in God's kingdom. Well, while I was in my college career, I met my wife, and we got married mid-semester of our junior year of Bible college. And we had like a little house. It was actually a parsonage. We were the youth pastors, the youth leaders at this one church about 30 minutes away from the school. And we would commute every day to school. And I'll never forget that day. It was a rainy, cloudy day. I felt like God was a million miles away. I just felt so disconnected with him, and I didn't understand why. I just couldn't for the life of me fathom what was going on. And my wife was driving, and I was kind of like looking out the window and watching the rain bead and cascade down the window. And in my heart, I was praying. In my head, I was praying. I was like, God, where are you? Why do I feel this way? And I said, Lord, I've examined my heart and I've examined my life, and I can't think of any sin or anything that I've done that would put a wedge between my relationship with you. Why do you feel like a million miles away? And I began to question my Christian life. And I said, God, is this all there is? Is this it? Have I arrived? Is this all there is to the Christian life? Because I feel like there should be more. I want more. I hunger. I thirst for more. I desire more. What's going on? And I said, Lord, if this is all there is, you're a pretty cruel God, because I still have that desire to want more, and you can't give me any more. And I was just agonizing and crying out to the Lord in my spirit. And that's when he spoke to me. Now, I didn't hear it audibly, but I'm telling you, it was this shy from being audible. It was so clear in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit. It was just resounding. And you know the biblical example of how God, when he talks to Moses and to Abraham, he repeats himself 2 or 3 times. Moses, Abraham, Samuel. He said 3 times, as clear as a bell, get back to the first century. Get back to the first century. Get back to the first century. It didn't answer any of my questions. It didn't seem like it addressed any of my questions that I was asking God. But strangely, I felt a peace within my heart and in my life and in my mind. And right then and there, I resolved to pursue this, to get back to the first century, to find out who the first century believers in Messiah Yeshua were, how they lived, how they act, what they were all about, what they believed. And it's kind of ironic, because I went to a Bible college that was supposed to teach me this, but when I discovered the first century sect of the Nazarene Jewish believers in Messiah Yeshua, they may have been a blurb or a snippet in Christian/church history class. I don't really even remember covering it. It was almost as if, just kind of a one-line sentence, and we moved on to Constantine and moved on to other things. But when I discovered the first century Nazarene believers in Messiah Yeshua, I discovered that they were all Jewish. I discovered that they practiced and believed the Judaism of the day. The only thing that set them apart from their non-believing Jewish counterparts was that they believed that Yeshua was Messiah. Not only that he was Messiah, that he was the promised, prophesied Messiah of Israel to come, but he was divine. He was God in the flesh. And they were still Torah observant. They still ate kosher. They still kept the feast. They still kept all the Jewish customs and traditions. And they worshipped side by side with non-believing Jews in the temple and at synagogue and in their homes. And it wasn't until Acts chapter 15 that Gentiles started coming on board. And it wasn't until the Bar Kokhba revolt that made a definitive split between the Nazarene Jews and between the rest of the Jewish world, whether they be Pharisees or Sadducees or whatever sect they were. Because General Bar Kokhba, he was proclaimed by Rabbi Akiva to be the Messiah, and the Nazarene believer says, no, we know who the Messiah is, and this guy isn't it. Sorry, we can't fight alongside you. We can't fight alongside this guy who you proclaim as Messiah. And that's when the Jewish community cut them off and counted them as traitors. But anyway, and I discovered this, and it changed my life. And in the process of discovering all this, I started digging into the roots of my family tree and discovered that there was Hebraic lineage on both my mother and on my father's side. And during this time, my wife's birth mother contacted her, and she discovered that she's a Levite, that she's Jewish, that she's a Russian Jew. And by this time, we were already pursuing and living a Messianic Jewish lifestyle. So having all this information come to light at that moment was just confirmation that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. We were going down the path that we were supposed to be going down on. And so that's when we started going to Messianic congregations, and we just kind of left the Free Will Baptist Protestant Church and just started pursuing our Torah-obedient life in Messiah Yeshua. And it was a little bit after that. We did a little bit of moving around, and I ran into the first Nazarene Jewish rabbi and went to his congregation in a synagogue. I trained under a Messianic rabbi in Nashville, Tennessee. I trained under a Nazarene rabbi in Ohio. And it was through this congregation and through this rabbi that I had my Hadafat Dam Brit. In other words, I officially converted and became a Nazarene Jew. And I also studied under another rabbi as well around that same time. And the Lord just called me to be a Netzari rabbi, not necessarily a rabbi that ran a school or ran a congregation. I'm not a pastoral rabbi, but I'm a teacher, I'm a preacher, I'm an evangelist. I'm a missionary rabbi, and that's what he has called me to do. And so all these experiences in my journey and learning about the first century church and the first century believers in Messiah Yeshua and all these changes that occurred in my life, I felt compelled to write it down in a book. And at first it was just going to be a book like a little pamphlet or a little essay to give to my family and friends who were greatly concerned about the massive changes that occurred in the life of my wife and myself, going from Protestant Christianity to a Torah-obedient form of Messianic Judaism. And they were concerned, and they just didn't understand, and a little bit frightened. So I wanted to put them at ease by writing all this out, writing my testimony, writing my journey. But as I did, the pamphlet, the essay, kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it eventually became a book. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to publish this for everybody, because not only it's going to help my family and friends understand, but it's going to help all of Christendom understand the Hebraic roots of the Christian faith and the Torah-obedient Nazarene Jewish roots that Christianity itself sprang from. And so that's kind of the calling that God has placed on my life, is to not only get back to the first century myself, but help assist other people, other believers in Messiah Yeshua, and other non-believing Jewish people and Muslims, to help them to get back to the first century, to walk in the footsteps of Yeshua our Messiah by walking and following in the Torah. Thank you so much. Shalom.